Hello everyone, and welcome to another Factorio Friday Facts. I'm Exterminator, and thank you so much for joining me again today. And we have another awesome one, number 420, Fusion Reactor. So we do have a new power system. I was really wondering if we were going to get a new power system with, quality bumping up the power requirements and strength of like all the buildings and stuff. I figured we kind of had to get a new power system because nuclear was just really not cutting it in our 2.0 sims with Will. It became very clear that like the power requirements are just through the roof in the expansion. So I'm really glad we're getting a fusion reactor. Now this is quite a long one. I am going to summarize bits of this lower down. Otherwise we would be here for like 40 minutes reading this. But it's all good information. So I would definitely say if you want to know every single, like if you want to read that, verbatim, then you can check it out. But we'll start off here. Written by Arundel. So basically, yeah, we're familiar with the nuclear reactor. It's a fission reactor that makes a lot of power in conjunction with its steam turbine. So nuclear energy system is unlocked on Novice, and in context space age, that makes it an early to mid-game unlock. For the planet Novice, nuclear power is great for the whole game. Water is endless and uranium is plentiful. I'm going to say that again. Way too plentiful in my opinion, but anyway, for space platforms, it's not ideal because it takes a lot of water and fair amount of space. Solar panels are so good in space, especially near the sun, that it's hard to justify a reactor on a small platform. Right, so this is for the platform travel they're referring to, the space platforms. If you're mainly going around Fulgura, then nuclear becomes more competitive because Fulgura has more ice from asteroids and less solar energy. Later, when you head to the fourth new planet, nuclear becomes a much better option because the solar power is so low and ice is more abundant. So that is confirmation, of course, that it's going to be probably an icy planet. At that point, you've had nuclear as an option for all 5 planets, although you probably don't use it on all of them, and a few space routes. So it's time to unlock a new and exciting energy system. So my take is that this is unlocked on the last planet. Also, it could be a coincidence, but the fact it is kind of bluish in stuff. I'm guessing, I think the other planet is kind of blue, icy. I think that kind of matches if you've noticed. The buildings you unlock on the planet have some aspect. It may not necessarily be color matching, but it has some aspect that matches the planet. So, I mean, I could just be totally wrong here. But anyway, this looks fantastic, first off. This looks absolutely amazing. Arundel did a brilliant job designing this. Visually, it looks really, really good, really cool. So this one's interesting. It works differently than nuclear in several ways, right? So this is obviously the fusion reactor. The impressive structure converts energy from a fusion power cell into super hot plasma. The structure at a base level makes plasma with an energy level or value of 100 megawatts, right? So that's already basically 2.5 times as good as a nuclear reactor. But as you will see in a moment, you can get a lot more than 100 megawatts out of the system. It doesn't do much on its own, though. Those connection points on all sides aren't just for show. So it does have connection points, and you may be thinking, oh, well, this is exactly like nuclear. It is similar, but it does have some caveats that make it quite a bit different and an interesting kind of puzzle, I suppose, in a way. So reactor connection. So like nuclear, the fusion reactor benefits heavily from neighbor bonus, but the fusion reactor can leverage them a lot more. So basically with nuclear, you can only ever have 3. Like it technically has the ability to gain a bonus from 4, but once you do that, there's no way to fuel the middle one, so you can't actually do that, which I find kind of funny. But yeah, so this is like our limit on uh, nuclear power. I'm getting like fission, fusion, nuclear mixed up in my head. But anyway, the fusion reactor down here has 8 connection points, 2 on each side, but for practical reasons, you can't have more than 5 neighbors connected. Each neighbor gives a 100% bonus, so 500% is the best case, 600% in total. So this is kind of what it would look like. This is like a comparison, right? This is the most you can have, and this is what it would look like. So far, it seems pretty similar. And again, like overall, it is fairly similar, but this is kind of what it'd look like. This means with a fusion reactor with 5 neighbors, outputs plasma with a power of 600 megawatts. Additionally, if the reactor is legendary, the base power goes up to 250 megawatts, and the power with max neighbors is 1.5 gigawatts. So if you had these at legendary quality, this would give you 1.5 gigawatts of power, which is crazy. Now, of course, getting these to legendary would be a whole other feat in itself, But even if you didn't want to do that, then 600 megawatts is pretty dang good as well, just for this. The neighbor connections line up with pass-through connections for coolant, which is this, and pass-through connection for plasma. The pass-through connections are one of the things that make bigger builds possible by not having to keep sides open for pipes. Okay, so then this is where it gets interesting. So, maybe a little further down, but there's a valid neighbor bonus between reactors. A special patch is added to the graphics to show the connection. There's a version of the connection patch for when it connects with a coolant pass-through, connects with a plasma pass-through, or connects for a neighbor bonus, but without a pass-through function. So that's really nice that they have like different indications for this. This juxtaposed image below shows the connection patch being added as connections are made by the outer two reactors being moved in. Reactors are rotated so that all three connection types are shown on the image. Okay, so yeah, you can see here kind of the difference. This one is moved in and actually connected, and then same with that one as well. Left, the outer reactors are touching the edge of another reactor but don't connect, like that. The outer reactors line up with the other reactors and have a connection to allow, as you can see here, right? And it's also super cool, yeah, because like you can see how this this pipe, it's hard to do without moving this, but see how this like curved thing right here, it actually connects in, and then same with this one here. That's super cool. So making plasma. So making plasma is where things get interesting. So fusion power starts with the power cell, which goes into a fusion reactor along with some coolant. The power cell and coolant are consumed at a fixed rate, even if the reactor is working more efficient due to neighbors. So this is how the power cells work with nuclear power. If you didn't know, I think most of you know this, but they're consumed at a rate so they last for 200 seconds, I believe it is, and it doesn't matter how much you're using the power or not. It's just a flat, like, constant, regardless, no matter what. A fixed amount of plasma is created, and the plasma temperature increases with reactor efficiency, which is interesting. The reactor consumes some electricity to maintain the reactor, so it actually uses a little bit of electricity on itself, which is another interesting aspect. But this is also where things get interesting. So the plasma temperature isn't necessarily something we need to pay attention to directly as a player. However, the more important value is the power that plasma carries, so megawatts are more important than degrees, but there is info on this, which is pretty wild, right? So the basic reactor, the plasma carries 100 megawatts and is 1 million degrees Celsius. I feel like that's hotter than the sun, or close to it. With a 100% neighbor bonus, it carries 200 megawatts and 2 million degrees Celsius. With 200% neighbor bonus, it makes 300 megawatts and 3 million Celsius, and so on. So with full neighbor bonus, I mean, that's insane, right? That's like 5 million degrees Celsius. And because of this, it cannot be carried into pipes, right? I mean, it would just melt straight through them instantly. And I'm not sure how it doesn't melt through the structure, but we'll just not think about that part. It needs to either flow through another fusion reactor or flow directly into the thing that actually makes the electricity, the fusion generator. So there is another component to this, and that is the fusion generator. So this would be equivalent to like the turbines of nuclear. And this also looks absolutely amazing. Like, look how, man, dude, like this is, like, see how this is like waving, like flowing through here and then out through here. I mean, this is some like Star Wars looking stuff. I mean, a lot more crude, but I mean, this is sweet. I love this so much. This is so cool. The fusion generator generates electricity from the plasma and returns an equal amount of warm coolant. It has a maximum power output of 50 megawatts. For a lone fusion reactor with no bonus working 100 megawatts, one fusion reactor will consume half the plasma. So then this is just simple math, right? One reactor is 2 generators, 2 reactors, because they get an efficiency bonus here, would be 8 generators, because it's just basically, since they do 50 megawatts, it's doubled. 3 reactors at 300% bonus is 918 generators, right? Of course, you don't necessarily need to have 18 generators if you have 3 reactors at 200%. If you have fewer than the system, then the system is still as efficient but has less max output and will buffer some plasma. Alternatively, you can have more generators than the reactors can supply at max load, so that when electricity demand is low, the plasma is buffered, but you have more electricity production if there's a sudden peak and draw. So this is really interesting because this is something we currently do not have the option for with power, right? This doesn't happen with nuclear, doesn't happen with steam, doesn't happen with solar directly. You can basically emulate this with accumulators, I suppose. But this is all built in. Now, I don't know to what degree it buffers it. My guess is it buffers it just like an assembler or a chemical plant would buffer it, like inside itself up to whatever it is, 100 or 200 or something, just like within it, which is really cool actually because, yeah, right, you could build your setup bigger, like especially, if you have lasers or whatever other like things that make spike and power, then you could build more generators than you can actually technically supply. But if you aren't using your max power, then that's fine, and the extra plasma will just buffer inside them. And then when you get a spike, it turns on the extra generators, and you'll be good to go for a short period. So that's really neat. I also like you can see the the heated coolant has a separate icon. Makes sense, but I just think it's nice. Additionally, generators can be connected to the end and sides of already connected generators, and then they get to share the plasma too. There are quite a few plasma connection ports to choose from, so there are a lot of layout options for how to arrange your fusion system. Just make sure the warm coolant has a way to output, but you can use pipes for that. Okay, so that's good. You can use pipes for that. I guess I missed this sentence, but basically, how do you connect so many to just 3 reactors if plasma can't go on pipes? Well, yeah, so they have a ton of direct connections basically, and you can see this is kind of what it looked like. Pretty cool, bit of a mess, but I mean that's kind of just the vibe of Factorio, to be honest. But overall, it looks pretty sweet, right? The heated coolant needs to be cooled back to its cold state. There's a special machine for that, but we'll save that for another Friday fact. So, yeah, so we have another building for cooling the coolant. I'm also curious how to make the coolant, right? I would assume maybe it's just a simple something in a chemical plant. I'm curious what it uses. Probably something from the last planet, since I'm guessing that's where we unlock this. And we currently have no way of making coolant, so I think it's probably from the last planet anyways. But maybe the thing that cools it down is what makes it. Either way, this is awesome. Now, there's like half of this Friday Facts for development, and do not get me wrong, this is actually really cool. I read through this, but for me to just read it word for word, like, we've already been here like at least 10 minutes. It would take a very long time. So I'm going to read parts of it because it is really cool information. But anyway, moving on. So development going around. Going around in toroids. I think I'm pronouncing that right, maybe. We want an in-game power system that would be powerful. We had a portable fusion reactor in-game for a long time, so fusion seemed like an obvious thing to consider. After considering a few other options, fusion was the one added to the initial prototype. The first prototype version of the fusion system that I made was pretty crude. In the theory, the original version had a lot of similarities to the system we have now, but it took a long detour along the way. When prototyping something new, it's often a fight with the game engine. For a more representative portrayal of the game concept, a lot of things can be faked with scripts. The problem is that using the scripts can be very bad for performance and can take a while to code. The first gameplay prototype for Space Age was a big mashup of all ideas so we could see what works, what doesn't, and cut it down to just the best bits. The gameplay prototype was designed for the main branch, stuff that everyone plays on, and it's designed to stay in the game. So a heavily scripted mock-up of the fusion system was a big no-no because it would be slow and need to be removed later anyway. It was also put together really quickly. A crude representation of the fusion system had to be made by representing the steps happen to items and fluids. This ended up being a series of crafting machines like assembler or chemical plants, but with fixed recipes. So you can see here, these are the coolant bits. This is the fusion bits. This is heated coolant. So yeah, so burns fusion, power cell to function, fixed recipe crafting machine, inputs cold coolant, outputs plasma, neighbor buns. Explained in tooltip, but can't work because it's a crafting machine. Cooling. Part 1, fixed recipe crafting machine handles fluid conversion side. Inputs plasma, outputs warm coolant, outputs dummy plasma for electricity, makes electricity. Yeah, so you can basically kind of just see their system here. Also, a machine couldn't make electricity and convert the type of fluid from one type to another at the same time. In the case of the generator, it needed to have a crafting machine for the fluid conversion, but that meant there needed to be a separate entity add-on just to make the electricity. Yeah, I guess I see what they're saying, right? Because they need to convert normal coolant to heated coolant. And all the system ended up as 4 entities that did weird things, a lot of long tooltips. For context, it's similar to how the first asteroid collectors worked. Asteroids didn't exist at the time, so instead you just had something like an assembling machine that produced asteroid chunks, and they could be placed anywhere. It relied, of course, on people reading the tooltips and such. Anyway, the fusion system was then simplified to a standalone fusion reactor, which was essentially just a burn generator with one entity. You just put in fuel and get power out. No fluids, no waste, no complications. There was some consideration for this to be final version, but it just felt really bad to use. The system was too simple. Often simple is good, but sometimes it is the absence of good. So yeah, like this is obviously nuclear power. What they were proposing is literally one building, and that's what I thought this was initially before they went into the details. And yeah, I mean, this is pretty lame. Like, who wants to just plop one building down and you're good to go? It's pretty boring. Even if it's super late game, you want at least like a little more something to it. And yeah, basically the danger is when a simple system replaces a complicated system in every possible way. So basically, before starting on concept art, Arendelle went back to the original version for the system. The original prototype never had a real chance. It had some good features, but felt like there was even more that they could do with it. And yeah, I felt like for a while maybe even would just not make it into the game. I started playing around with the idea of making Fusion more like a modular building instead of structures that connect together directly so that you can't use pipes to separate them. I tried a lot of different options and arrangements and found a set of patterns that showed a lot of potential. One of those options fit with the existing entity size, so I started testing with that. So this is a testing arrangement. Testing arrangements to its limit, 1.4 terawatts, I think it is, of per power, which is insane. Yeah, maybe we'll just let's build a base with that in mind. Let's do that, right? And then we come down to like original concept art. There's like line drawn art, which I think looks amazing. I saw other people had similar thoughts as well, like on the forum and Reddit comments. This looks really freaking cool. Like a lot of people are saying they actually wish we could play with this. I kind of prefer the other one, but this is still really cool. I do really, really like this design, right? And yeah, basically just on the design, Arendelle says the generator less focus on steam than other generators, so the design should lean more towards featuring the rotor and or stator of the electric generation system. The generator also can't have only 2 rotations like the other generators, it needs 4. And because the direction is so important to building, you need to be able to tell the difference at a glance. Yeah, this is some pretty freaking cool line art. So the next steps would be to demo the entire fusion system that would heavily rely on Lewis scripting. Demo made it possible to get a realistic impression of the working system. And with the current number of entities in process, correct connections, bonuses, and restrictions, ability to use pipes, custom tooltip overlays, and so on. Also, now that people had completed the game, they had a better understanding of what sort of systems would be interesting to play with that part of the game. This is hilarious. This is the thing that converts the heated coolant into other coolant. They purposely drew over it, which is really funny. I love this. But I must say, the generators look really cool when they're vertical. Now, this is a weird comment maybe, but like, I mean, don't get me wrong, they look really cool horizontal as well. But I don't know, something just like caught my eye when you view them at this arrangement. It's just like so different. Like this just looks really, I mean, this looks really good and different, but it kind of still looks ish like a turbine. I mean, I guess this does too. I don't know. Maybe I'm just weird, but I think this looks like really cool when they're vertical like this. So there's a 900 megawatt system. Pretty cool, but yeah, no spoilers. Dang, so close. This made the system much more understandable. So brought V on to demo it, and it was well received. From there, we defined some of the specifics of the system. The biggest change is altering the size and connection points. So this is like getting crazy with options in Blender for connection points. I definitely do not envy whoever had to do this. Probably V or maybe Albert or Arendelle. And eventually I found a 3x5 design where we were both happy with the number of build options. The new size meant the concept graphics needed a bit of redesign for the new aspect ratio and connection placement. That wasn't too bad. Then after they balanced it, they're ready to present to the team. And yeah, I mean, this looks pretty dang cool if you ask me. This is a 9 gigawatt system, 22 gigawatts of legendary, which is absolutely insane. And the proposal was accepted, right? So BossKid coded up the new system based on the demo. I then upgraded the concept art from placeholder quality to some more detailed versions ready for the next stage. Production, the final graphics were made by Jersey, and they look great. They also managed to figure out how to get animated effects on the connection pipes, which we weren't sure would be possible, which I think is definitely, excuse me, definitely a great addition. So that hasn't changed much since then, with one exception. The original version had a fluid reservation system where a generator wouldn't let fluids pass through until it was some percent full. This meant that they'd fill up in a chain or tree pattern, and the percent of glowing generators would be the percent capacity you're using. Feature was lost with the fluid system rework because now they all draw evenly from the same collection pool. Okay, I mean that's fair. So I guess maybe that's one downside to the fluid rework system, but it's not that big of a deal to me at least. And then the last thing is we do get something kind of new here. So portable fusion. Yeah, basically the old portable fusion reactor is from Navis, but the new fusion system is at the end of Space Age, so obviously something needed to change. So the old portable fusion reactor from 1.1 has been renamed to portable fission reactor and has a nice new icon to better represent it. The recipe has been updated to include a uranium fuel cell, and the power remains the same. This is absolutely hilarious. These suckers, they just strapped a nuclear reactor to a backpack. This is like the Spirotron being made out of a rocket turret with like 4 exoskeletons. This is absolutely hilarious, and I love it. Of course, yeah, you just like shrink this down and just carrying a, radiating, like deadly radiation backpack around with you, a little mini fusion reactor on your back. This is super funny. A new portable fusion reactor is unlocked with a fusion system. It's an upgrade of the fusion version that's more powerful, 2.5 megawatts at base quality or 6.25 if legendary. And yeah, so this just uses the graphics that was this basically. And yeah, if you haven't noticed, this is basically the thing from Back to the Future. Crap, I forget the name. Mr. Fusion, I think it is. I saw some comments from people saying they should change it to match the new graphics. This is the one thing I actually hope they don't change because I love it. I don't know. I just like really like this. I think it's super nostalgic. If they change it, like I won't be mad, but it's not something where I'm actively asking them to change it, like assemblers, for example. But yeah, so this makes sense. So now we have 2 levels, which is great, right? This also works out well because, of course, legendary equipment in power armors is really power hungry. So having something that can support that better also makes sense. So the conclusion here is the fusion system makes a lot of power in a relatively small amount of space. Since the coolant is mostly recycled and the fusion power cells are very energy dense, the system requires very little in terms of inputs to keep going. This makes the system good on space platforms, of course, right? It's nice to be able to blast through space on a space platform that isn't limited by power. It's also a good system for planets if you need loads of power, but does rely on imports, and it's not trivially simple, so it's not always the best option. So this is interesting. They say it relies on imports. So it would the only import I can think of it would rely on would be coolant and fusion cells, right? Which I guess would be the case for every planet except the last one, because that's, I think, probably where you unlock both those. So yeah, if you use it on anywhere else but the last planet, you would have to export coolant and fusion cells, or plasma cells, sorry, then from the last planet to whatever planet you're using it on. So that is something to keep in mind. But yeah, overall, I'm super excited. Like, I figured we probably had to be getting some sort of new power system, and it looks like we finally are. So this is really exciting. I'd love to hear what you all think down below. I can't imagine anyone's unhappy about this. Definitely needed something new with how everything is scaling up in the expansion, and I think it looks really great. It's definitely something to work towards from the last planet. I feel like maybe there'll be something else on the last planet as well to unlock, like in addition to the specialized cooling down thing. I don't know how to say it better. But anyway, that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed and are as excited as I am. And if you are, definitely drop a like on the video. And if you're new and aren't subscribed already, definitely do so to keep up with future content. And leave your thoughts below. Until next time, I look forward to seeing you all, and do take care.